up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Bullets, Barbells, and Barbecue. I'm your host, Brett, and it's just me and multiple surgeries, Matt. He's got the sling off, ready to roll.
Getting after it.
Go out our show partners, Elite Nutrition. Check them out at elitenutritionomaha.com. Use code B3 at checkout for 10% off, or you can go to the store in Omaha or Lincoln, yell B3.
Get a free shaker.
Great. You really nailed that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We have Rosewood Block. They make the best cutting boards in barbecue. Check them out at rosewoodblock.com. Use code B3 at checkout there as well.
Yep.
Right.
I just oiled my Rosewood Block, and it looks way better. I haven't done it in a number of months.
I know I need to do this one. This one got scuffed
just
up.
A little weird.
I cut some beef ribs on it.
Yeah, I did too. Like I cut everything on top of that thing. But I did a bunch of like peppers and chicken, and usually I use a different board for chicken because there's just something about how juicy the chicken is.
Yeah,
that it just weirds me out that it's going to come alive in there. But yeah, the board was looking a little rough, so I actually used soap and water and scrubbed it, and then let it dry for a couple days, and then oiled it, and I think we're back in business.
Nice. Yeah, this one, when they made it, she was like, "Oh, we'll just do it as like a showpiece. So we'll make the logo center bigger," and then I cut on it, and now it's got some scuffs on it.
That's all right. It's used. That's what they're supposed to be.
I did a hot and fast brisket on my new Gateway at home that Amber got me for anniversary.
Yeah.
And I thought I had it set. So I did a Snake River Farms. It was like a 15. I trimmed it down. Probably almost a little too aggressive, but I trimmed it down. And I put a water pan. So I bought an additional grate for mine.
Oh, yeah.
So I can put the water pan underneath of it.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll fit a full-size water pan.
Do you put the water pan like directly underneath?
I put it directly underneath, and then it kind of protects the meat. This was like the smaller water pan. So good. I thought I heard something. So it didn't cover the edges of the brisket. So anyway, I thought I had it all set. You know, I did the old fingertip trick that redneck video taught me. Because I leave the chimney like wide open on it.
Yes.
And then just close down
So the intake is restricted, but the exhaust is wide open.
So I thought I'd set. I went help Amber set up for an event really quick. I was maybe gone for like an hour and a half, maybe, just not far from my house.
425 degrees.
It was. I had it set at like 325-ish. I got home and it was like 425 degrees, and I was like, fuck. And I'd been gone.
Grilling.
I'd been gone for like it'd been on there for maybe like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And when I got home, the brisket was at 160.
Hot and real fast.
So I turned it down. I tried to get it all governed down. You know, I opened it up a little bit, blah, blah. I let it get up to like 170, like almost 175. I pulled it out, wrapped it in paper. Okay, I put it back on, get my probe in there. I get the temperature under control. So it's hanging around like 10. So it finishes, it gets up. I let it run a little higher because the hot and fast, I ran the internal temperature up a little bit higher. Yeah. It's like 207. I'm poking it with the probe, and I was like, all right, it's pretty good. So I throw it in the cooler, cracked for like an hour to cool. Another like 15, 20 minutes with the lid like open, and then I put it on the cutting board because I had to go help Amber tear down at her event.
Yep.
So I let it, which I mean, usually at least like an hour, usually an hour, that was a pretty good rest time anyway. So I put it on the cutting board, let it rest. I only let it rest down to like 165. But this thing is like, I pull out of the cooler, and there's, it's like, this paper's like soaked. It's like, I was like, all right, maybe this fucking worked out. Because, you know, like Wagyu is a little more forgiving. Yeah. So I get it out, and I'm like trying to slice the end. I was like, and this was the sides that were not protected by the pan. I was like,
tough.
It was, but it ate really good. So I slice it. I'm getting through. And normally I do the old fold test on the finger. And it's like, just like not folding. It's just like, but it's got like
an arc, but not a bend.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, it would pull apart.
Okay.
Pretty easily. So I ate some, and I was like, that's not like my best like work. Seasoning was good or whatever. Yeah. So I take a couple pieces. There's this really nice girl that always has her her pop up next to Amber.
Okay.
And then her dad always helps her out. So I was like, and I was planning on, Amber's like, oh, you should bring some brisket for me. And I was like, oh, I was already planning on that. So I take him a piece of the lean, piece of the fatty side. And I was like, hey man, I brought this for you to try. I was like, it's not like my best work, but, and he's like, well, if that's not your best work, he's like, then you should open a restaurant, because that was still, so it wasn't bad. It was wasn't as tender as I wanted. Yeah. So I think if I do it at the 320, but only that took 4.5 hours.
So 2 hours at 425.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah, I think if I was there to monitor it, and that was my own fault. I was like, oh, I think I got to set. I just need to play with the temperature some more on them. But yeah, so that's how my hot and fast Wagyu turned out. But I mean, it was still good, you know.
Yeah, but I think with brisket, like if you do fuck up like that and you have some like tough ends, like you can cut those pieces off and do them like brisket tacos or just do something else. Like I like to throw them in with eggs.
And I might, if I would have maybe let it rest more, might it have gotten any better? I don't know. I mean, it was still pretty juicy.
Maybe. Yeah.
It was just those ends. So,
yeah. But like the inside was fine, right? Like
yeah, like I said, but it was weird. Like you couldn't like, it didn't cut. Well, I got like a shitty fork I use at work, and it didn't cut very well with that. But you could grab it and just like pull it apart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, I mean, it wasn't. I didn't have to like throw it in the trash or anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I think that also helps illustrate like if you have the better quality meat, like if you'd have done that with just like your Hy-Vee choice.
Yeah, Wagyu is way more forgiving.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, yeah. So when people are always scared of a Wagyu, I'm like, actually, like it's pretty forgiving.
Speaking of opening restaurants, OJ's. Do you know that restaurant on like 680, right
like,
on the way out to my house?
Like OJ Simpson?
OJ's like the juice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No.
So on the way out to my house, if you go past that exit before the 30th Street exit, there's on the south side of the interstate, there's a restaurant. It was a Mexican restaurant called OJ's. Not quite sure. Been there forever. They closed down, I don't know, a year ago, maybe not that long. But anyways, the restaurant is for sale. And there were a couple folks in the old Forgot store talking about looking at buying it to open a barbecue shop in it.
Oh, who's going to cook at it?
I don't know. I don't know what they do. Like, I think he does his own kind of like maybe pop-up stuff from time to time. I don't know. He wasn't one of the regulars, so I didn't know him.
I still wouldn't mind doing it here like we talked about on like Fridays. Yeah. I still know what that all entails. I think you just fly under the radar.
I think so. Like obviously if you're at that place, you
or
have
you just
to do
sell
all the restaurant
do you
stuff.
just sell plates? Because it's not illegal to sell a plate.
I think when you're in that kind of establishment, like they probably have catchways to like get you.
No, but if we're just doing a pop up out here,
yeah, you could sell plates or you could just
be like, this plate holds 2 meats and a side. This plate holds 1 meat and a side.
yeah. Buy a plate, get some meat.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. We did that one time on Ragbri. We sold cups, not beer.
Right. Yeah.
You can sell a cup all you want to. You just can't sell the alcohol without a license.
But the interesting thing I thought about OJ's, and of course, like you spend some time just thinking about stuff that you're probably not going to do. Like, I'm not going to open a barbecue restaurant because I don't.
You don't know that.
As long as everyone's cool eating pellet smoked meat, because I have no desire to manage. I really, really want to manage a fire. Like want to manage.
Yeah, I mean, if that was like your thing, like let's say we just did it and we were like a Snow's barbecue where you just open on like Friday.
Yeah.
And that's all we did on Friday was just hang out by the smoker.
See, like, and that place could be kind of cool for it because it's on the interstate. It's not all that convenient to get to, but they also have a billboard on their property.
Oh, that makes money then.
That makes a bunch of money because it's right as you're coming. Like everyone who goes to Iowa to work or comes to Nebraska to work, like shit ton of those people come right by it. So it gets a lot of traffic. So I don't know what they're getting a month.
Yeah, I would think. Do they own that, or does somebody else and they just pay the rent to like
if
you have like I know people who had like a Verizon tower like by their building and like Verizon would pay them like.
So from what I got from eavesdropping on these folks that are talking about it behind me is that is part of the property. So the property owner owns that billboard. So then they rent space on that billboard to someone. So they get money from the rental of that. Oh, so when you buy OJ's, you get you get that billboard, and then you get to make some money off the billboard, and then maybe hopefully. I mean, based on what I've heard about OJ's, the billboard's one of the main things that kept them open over the years. Like,
wow,
they kind of went down, and I never went to OJ's. We talked about going, but just never did. Had friends who worked there going through high school. And they said like they would just show up and there would be a sign that said that they were closed for 3 weeks because the owners were like, we're going to go back to Mexico. And they would just fly down to Mexico for 3 weeks. But like they wouldn't tell employees. They wouldn't really tell anyone. They would just be gone.
Well, that's good.
And then they would come back and be like, hey, you guys coming to work? Like, oh, you're back now? Cool.
Oh, that seems like a legitimate way to run it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure there was a lot of cash transactions.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe the Friday barbecue thing, we'll figure that out. But I don't think people care if it's pellet or not.
No, probably.
We can do a mix. I mean, I got that drum here too.
I still found like I've seen a number of those trailers that have 2 of your XL smokers on it.
Yeah.
So it's got 2 of those. It's got, I've seen a couple of them that have 2 of that, and then they have a grill station on the back.
Oh, yep.
So
I've
if
seen
you
that.
actually wanted to, like, if you were going to smoke meats or something, or do some kind of regular grilling, you had that too.
I think you should figure out numbers, like how many briskets do you need, and how many racks of ribs you need to
Right.
do, and how much chicken or turkey do you want to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like where are you going to hold it over? Like, is it all coming off? Do you have a big enough pit that you're going to, okay, I'm going to make 25 brisket, and it's all coming off about the same time, or you stage it so they come off at different times, and then you rest it for different times and you pull it all. Unless you have just a giant warmer, right? If you got something a bit warmer that you can keep it all at 145, then fuck it.
Yeah. I don't know. We can figure it out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So you were talking about you hired
Yeah.
a
So
homeless-
I tried to hire a homeless guy. I don't know if he was homeless or just begging for money.
Where'd you find him at?
Right at the Hy-Vee down on Center Street. Like
Oh, the 90th and Center?
Yeah. So I went in there on my way out, and this guy just came up to the window, and of course I was like, just roll down my window because why not? So he asked if I have any money, and I said yes. And then he just stared at me, and he's like, "Do you have any to spare?" And I said, "No."
Oh man, do you have any money? Not for you.
I said yes, and he said no. And so then he's like, just kind of.
Did you start like looking through your wallet, like sorting through cash? Be like, no, none with your
I
name
just
on
started
it.
like tearing money in half. Just like started tearing bills up.
Just none with your name on it.
Yeah,
I guess.
I'm like, let me see. No, that's my name, my Aaron's name. Oh,
Yeah, I
no, I don't see you, buddy.
Didn't see your name on anything.
Yeah,
Weird.
That's weird. And so then every now and then, like in those situations, like, so part of me wants to have that conversation to like try to figure out like, why are you here? Like what led to you being here? Right. And I feel it is super judgmental, but like there's this automatic assumption like, oh, well, you got yourself here because of 100% your own fault and you're a piece of shit and all this stuff. Right. Now, who knows what led people to there? Maybe it's, he's been out of luck for a couple weeks and he's on his way back, but he just needs a little bridge between here and there. Like, who knows? I don't know. So talking to him, and he says, does the, are you like, no, like nothing? And I was like, nope, sorry, man. And he's like, went on to say something about not getting any help, whatever. And then I was like, whoa, you don't know if I've already given $100 to somebody else. Like I might have already donated a whole bunch. You have no idea. You're just making these fucking assumptions. And for whatever reason,
You didn't say. I probably gave it some other shitbag
right, I gave it to this
to
other
group
dude
him
who-
into that
Yeah.
shitbag scenario.
And for whatever reason, like there's sometimes, like I feel like I'm pretty good at controlling my emotions. Like I don't really get worked up. I'm pretty even keel, almost to a fault.
Yeah, Switzerland.
And for some reason, like this guy's demeanor just immediately like took me halfway to being really pissed. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're in it. So start talking with him, and he says something about, well, that's super fucked up. Everyone's fucking up. No one was there. Like when I was having my stroke on 72nd Street, nobody helped. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so you're blaming everyone else's passiveness on me? Like I wasn't even fucking there, but you're going to blame me for it? Well, I mean, it's just fucked up. Like you're like, all I need is just a little bit of help. And I was like, cool. And you have no idea who I've already helped. You don't know what I've done today. You're just making some fucking assumption.
Well, and what's a little bit of help, and what's that little bit of help going to do?
Right. Like in that, and
Like, oh, here's $1.
right. And I think, who am I to judge if I give him, he go gets drunk? Like my work gives me money and I go get drunk. they don't judge me for it.
After a while, they might.
Well, they might, but as long as I keep doing my stuff, it's
Yeah.
fine. So he's getting there, and I don't honestly remember exactly what he said, but I heard it as he called me a piece of shit.
Okay.
And then that immediately, so there's been, I can say 3 times in my life where I went from like stable to like boiling point mad. And that's one of them. So I get out of the car, and it's funny, like I get out of the car and
Him not knowing your surgeries.
well, yeah, he didn't know that surgeries. Like he just didn't know that like one strong wind and I'm going to crumple.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh. And so he backs up a little bit, but I'm not going to let that happen. So I close the distance to be in his personal space.
Are you armed at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we exchange a few more words. And I'm saying, you're not offering me anything. Like, I have everything you want, but you just want. And I'm like, will you work for money? And he's like, yeah. I was like, why don't you fucking say that? Like, if you work, like, I'd be like, I got a bunch of outside work. It's not good work. It's a shit ton of outside work. But I've got work. I will pay you $20 an hour to come out and do this stuff. And he's like, really? I'm like, yes. Like, I will pay you to do. I'm not going to give you this money. And so we kind of go back and forth. And I'm telling him, I'm like, all right, so tomorrow morning or tomorrow, maybe it was, I left here on a Friday. Yeah, because it was tomorrow. Yeah, so it was like, we come back here to podcast, and I said, all right, be here at 11, and I will be here at 11. I'll pick you up, take you up to the house. I can guarantee at least 3 hours of work, upwards of 6 hours of work, $20 an hour. And I was like, and I've got a bunch of deli meat. You can have some sandwiches and shit. And he's like, all right, cool. Yeah. And I go, just know that I'm suspicious of people I don't know, and I don't know you. And I go, and I told him, I go, I am armed. I will be armed. And it's my house. And I value that more than you. And he was like, fair enough, man. I get it. I got a family too. And I was like, all right. I go, but tomorrow, 11, you're going to be here, right? And he's like, are you going to be here tomorrow at this spot? And he points over to the like Goodwill donation thing out there. And so he points over, like, I'll meet you right over there at 11. I was like, I will be here at 11. And like I said, got all this work. So I go home and I talk to Aaron, and Aaron's like, I don't really feel comfortable with you bringing some fucking rando to the house.
I was wondering about that too, because now they know your address.
Right. And I was like, that's fair enough.
Just blindfold him.
Well, the good thing is that we don't have address and numbers on our house. We have,
the stick in the yard.
We have a stick in the yard that I would just knock over because it's actually not planted. I can just blows over all the time.
I think you should just blindfold him.
So I had this plan that I was going to drive, because you can take a couple different ways to get there. And so we would go up kind of through Fort Calhoun and wind our way back down, and then come to the house. And then when I'd leave, I'd take a different way out.
But driving through like a forest so he thinks he's going to get murdered.
Exactly. Like you go up through River Road.
Yeah, yep. I get it.
So we doing that. But I told Aaron this, and I said, but if you are not comfortable with it, like, I get it. Totally cool. Like, I'm not going to bring someone out here that you are going to then be kind of like looking over your shoulder or feel uncomfortable about it. And so she's like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, I don't really give a shit. Like, I thought, we got a bunch of stuff to do. Neither one of us want to do it. And if this guy will come out and do it, cool. So she calls her friend. They talk a little bit, and she's like, no, I don't feel comfortable with it. I was like, all right, cool. So I told her, I'm like, all right, well, since I told this guy I'd be there, if like he actually shows up, I'll give him $20, tell him like, hey, I talked to you. You're not comfortable with it, but at least you were here. You know, you're banking on making something. So here's $20 for showing up. But sorry, we're not going to be able to offer you the work. So I go out there. Like, I think we came here, did the podcast, went over there. I got there at 10:57, I think, is when I got there, because I wanted to be sure that I was early. Surprise, he wasn't there. I waited till 11:09, and then I left. A little, I don't know. I don't want to say like I was surprised that he wasn't there.
I'm not.
I wasn't shocked that he wasn't there. I was honestly a little disappointed, because it was like that hopeful thing of like, hey, like, this guy's really looking to, like, he'll willing to work to get ahead, right? To do some stuff. Wasn't there. And then, not yesterday, but earlier this week, I happened to be back at that place because I had to drop something off at her parents' house. And that same guy's out there panhandling in the parking lot. And I wasn't going to say anything. I was like, fuck it. Like, it's over it. But he happened to come up to the truck after I got in it, after leaving the store. And I roll the window down and just look at him, thinking that he's going to be like, oh, shit, doesn't recognize me.
Oh, he was just fucked up that day, or what?
I don't know. I think he maybe just made enough empty promises or talked to enough people that it was fine. So he starts asking for money, and I do the same thing. I'm like, yes, I have money. And he's like, oh, you have any spare? I said, no. And I said, but are you willing to work for it? And he's like, yeah, I'll work for it. And I was like, bullshit. I tried to hire your ass like a month ago, and you weren't here. What? No, you haven't done, like, bullshit. Remember, we talked here. You were going to meet over there. And he's like, oh, well, whatever. I'm like, yeah, you're fucking dead to me, man. Well, I didn't say that part, but I was like, if you're not willing to work for it and shit, like, no one's going to help you. Like we've all got
No,
our
people
own shit.
fucking will.
We've got it well. I mean, other people will. I won't.
Yeah.
I was like, but like we've all got our own shit to take care of and stuff. And like, I have everything that you want, right? I have money and the resources and we're like, you are offering me nothing at this point. So done. And then he started to walk away when I wasn't done talking to him, but I didn't get out. I really wanted to get out.
You just, hey,
Yeah, hey, I'm not done with you yet.
get over here. Let me tell you more stuff you're not going to listen to anyway.
Yeah.
Let me lecture you on shit you're not going to listen to anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll say honestly, I wasn't surprised, but I was disappointed. Is probably the right way to say it. Like disappointed that, like I went out, what I would consider like out of my comfort zone, to like extend a helping hand. Like yes, they have to work for money, but like Aaron and I are well. I mean, I'm not competent enough right now, but at the time I was physically competent enough to do the work. I just didn't want to. So I'm like, yeah, I'll hire this out. And if it helps this guy get just a little bit further ahead and he's really going to do better, cool. Like that, I'm good with that. But then to not show up and who knows, no idea what happened. Could have been a totally legitimate thing. Like maybe he had another stroke, got fucking hit by a car trying to run there after saving babies out of a tree.
Maybe he got drunk the night before.
Maybe he got hammered. But even getting hammered, like that's the one thing that I don't cut many people, because I have gotten torn to shit on a night and still showed up the next day to do all the things that I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
But it's probably why I'm not homeless. And they are.
That's where I think homeless for a lot of people is a choice. You know, the panhandling thing is a choice for some people.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, and I think I've talked about this before. I had a client back in the day. Her boyfriend owned a plumbing company, and they were going to Home Depot up the street and turn in. The guy's like, "Oh, there's a guy panhandling." He's like, "Hey man, you got any money?" He's like, "No." He's like, "But I own a plumbing company. I always need laborers." He's like, "Here's my card," and the guy's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not about that." So I just think, and then you always hear the story about there's some people that are out there that are like actually fairly like well off, and they just panhandle for money, like, and they make a good amount of money.
And those, I'd like to see some like actual documented evidence, because like I've heard about it and I've heard people talk of those folks.
I think it was my mom one time. They saw a guy like just get in his fucking panhandle, and they said walk to a nice truck and drive away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's there. I don't know. I would be surprised if it's as prevalent as like we think it is. No doubt that it's happening. I bet it happens more often in like a bigger city where you have a more of an opportunity to do something like that.
The hard part is I don't think that as far as like the homelessness, like the people who, you know, and we know some people who work at some of the shelters, and you hear like a lot of stories. These guys are getting government assistance and whatever, and they live there, and you know, because the day they get their checks, they're just gone, and they'll just show up just hammered with bottles.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I had a client of mine, someone she knows, family friend or family's son, is homeless, and he had some kind of medical issue. He ended up in the hospital. Well, then so he kind of got sober while he was in there, and they put him in one of the treatment facilities. And they kind of, I think they get you clean, and then they help you get like a resume together, you know, shit like that. And well, so they were taking part of his government assistance to cover his whatever living there. Well, he didn't like that they were taking his money, so he just said fuck it and left, and he's back under the overpass. So again, right. I think some of the problem in this country is there's no actual fear of failure.
Yeah, the safety net's too big and too broad and too long, right? It supports you for.
Yeah, and we've talked about, you know, welfare system, and you can go into a whole long drawn out thing of that. And I think there's ways to graduate people off of welfare and do it the right way, so you don't just like, oh hey, you make $1 more than we allow, so we throw you to the sharks.
But you lost I attribute that to a loss of a sense of community.
There is
like
that.
You don't have.
But the funny part is, but then they live in a homeless community.
Right. So they're in that community, and I bet they rely on each other a lot. Like they're going to help each other out, right? So someone makes some money, they see fucking old Timmy over here didn't do like. I would be surprised if they weren't helping each other out some, right? So even if it's a community of sorts, right? And there's like my dad's dad was probably one of the coolest people I knew but didn't know how great he was. When my dad was growing up, he was responsible for distributing, it wasn't welfare at the time, but it was like a state assistance, right? And all the people that he met with he had to drive to like the middle of nowhere to give them their checks and meet up with them. Because
they don't want to be seen.
No one wanted, and he said that it was oftentimes that people would qualify for, let's say, $1,000, but they would just take 700 because that's what they needed.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories where they would meet them behind the building somewhere.
Yeah, they would meet them and they would do stuff, and oftentimes those same people, when they got back up and running, would then do the old like pay it forward, right? And they would help and they would give back to the community because it was the community that supported them, and you have a general loss of sense of community. And it's not like, oh, you know your neighbors, right? Like I have friends who live in places, and like we know people who live in neighborhoods who like know your neighbors, but it's not. I don't think that's a community.
Yeah, I like shut my garage door. Amber knows more of the neighbors because she will take Loki for a walk, and sometimes I will, but she does way more than me.
Yeah, but it's like, and so living in the Ponca area, way more spread out, right? Like acreages. There's no like streets that you can walk up and down to go do stuff.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I grew up on a farm. Yeah,
but Aaron and I know way more of the people, and we have so much more of a connection to the people in that area than we did when we lived in that celebrity home neighborhood where we knew our neighbor. And like if we were outside or like we happened to be barbecuing and they poked their head outside, we'd like, oh shit, hey, yeah, do you want to come over? We would like, we knew maybe, I don't know, 5 households in that neighborhood, but we didn't really do anything with them. We tried to organize some things with a couple other families to like try to do some even like street things or like our little area thing, and it just like never got any traction.
Well, I think, and I know everybody has their different views on religion and church, but I think church is a community thing for a lot of people too.
100%.
And I think there's a lot of times it gets vilified by, even in like all the political tension, and I think there's a lot of, it gets vilified, especially by one side more than the other. But I think we're like having that community of a church or the religion, you know, and I think, and whatever people want to believe about religion, it does give people a lot of people a moral compass in life, you know, if they don't have one, you know, and it gives them it
helps pass on accountability, right?
Well, yeah, and it, like that moral compass, like, you know, like you're a follower of Christ, you're probably like, this is probably pretty shitty. Like, what would, I'm always being watched kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, what would God think about
what would
this?
Maybe Jesus do?
What would God think about this right now? You know, but I think it gets vilified, which I think church is a good place for a lot of people.
It's great. Like I keep trying to get my parents to go because they don't.
But you don't believe in it.
No, but I still like the community aspect of it. Like we went to a Bible study for a couple years, mostly because I liked the people that were there and we enjoyed hanging out with them.
But none of that was, you're just like
we would go there and we'd talk and stuff, and I would listen and ask questions, and like Aaron would kick me if I started to get like combative or something and stuff. But it was like after a while, after the first 6 months, I was like, oh, I just really like these people. I like hanging out with them. I think they're good people. Like we get along great. I'm like, cool. This is an avenue to hang out. So, but you can leverage that and be part of that community, and I think there's a lot of benefit to it, right? I mean, that it gives you a belonging.
Yeah, and it's because you see people like, especially on social media, you see people all the time like, oh, another extreme Christian view person. Okay, like, I mean, I grew up Catholic. Amber and I've gone to a non-denominational church. I'm like over here trying to say I'm some kind of no, I don't go to church all the time. No, and I don't have anything against it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think like, for the most part, like this extreme whatever. If you're going to a church or a Bible study, like, unless they're like asking you, like, we need to kill people to prove our, you should be able to decipher.
Which I'm kind of on board with.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, to be like, oh, these extreme Christians, there's not like really a ton of those. Like,
but I would lump that in with any extreme view. Is like, you can have whatever views you want, as long as you're not pushing them on me.
Well, and I think calling anybody, just because a lot of people have the same view and like, and it like, and it's like, you know, it's not extreme, but you call people extreme. It's just like when people generalize, like, oh, all these extreme, like MAGA Republicans. Just because somebody votes for Trump does not mean they're like some kind of extremist.
Right, let's define extreme, right? What's the baseline Like, what are we calling baseline?
Well, and you know what
and
they'll
then
say?
what's extreme?
They'll be like, well, January 6th. They'll be like, you mean when like nothing really happened?
Well, it even like ignoring, like, define our baseline. Like,
Yeah.
what's the middle, right? So, like, pick any topic out there, right? That we don't have to, but find that, like, tell me what that baseline is. And then once we have an agreed upon baseline, then we go, okay, yeah, extreme. Like, extreme is a relative definition, right? You have to know where you're starting before you go, right? If I'm way on the left and someone's in the middle, they're extreme right to me. Vice versa. If I'm way on the right and they're in the middle, that's extreme left to me.
Yeah.
But if we have this common definition of the middle, then like, oh shit, I'm extreme right, or oh shit, I'm extreme left. But where everyone takes it from this individualized viewpoint of where am I sitting versus where is this predefined middle ground. And when you define everything from a relative position, then it's really, really hard to have agreed upon definitions and positions because we're arguing from different points.
Yeah. Yeah, you just can't assume everyone's an extreme something or other just because.
I will say that guy is an extreme disappointment.
Who?
The homeless man I tried to hire.
Oh, yeah. See, but now you know the extreme of it. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I think, like you said, the community thing, I said people need to stop, like, villainizing, like, religion. Like I said, unless it's like like if you have, like, a bunch of, like, jihadists, which are fairly extreme.
I think most.
But when you're looking to, like, killing people, but 90%, especially of religious groups in our area and, like, probably in the U.S. mainly, aren't, like, having, like, jihad parties and out there, like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And yeah, I mean, the Crusades have been over for a long time. You can't keep being like, oh, these extreme, like, Crusades happened a long time ago. and like, especially affecting the U.S. And like I've said before, if people would worry about just their friends and family and them, you know what I mean? And their neighbors, and then those people did it, it just grows out from there. But people will be, they'll live in Ponca, but they're more concerned with what's going on in like the Ukraine than they are with their neighborhood. Like, I sent a ton of money to Ukraine. Oh, do you want to help? Like, we're doing a fundraiser for we're doing the pancake feed at the firehouse. No.
Which is October 6th, I believe.
Oh, nice. Nice. But you know what I mean? But they're like, no. But it's like,
yeah.
But you'll donate to shit that's not even near you.
So I've had this really weird, and I've had this thought, I've had a lot of really weird thoughts.
That's true.
But I've been kind of thinking about this thing. So Erin is in Togo, Africa right now.
Risky business.
And she's over there doing, we call it a medical mission trip. It's not through any religious affiliated group, but it is through a group that has traveled around to set up medical clinics in different areas around I don't know what that part of Africa is called, the western coast area. And so they've done some stuff there. And so she sent back pictures, and like I've seen a bunch of pictures of poor areas. Like I've seen Slumdog Millionaire, right? Just atrocious conditions. And I'm sure being there in person really brings it home. But as I've thought about like her being there versus doing stuff here, and I have a conflict of like, because my initial reaction is like, we should take care of our neighbors first. Like, who's here versus that. On the flip side, the people born into Lome, Agbaluve is where they actually are, 2 hours outside of it. The people born into Agbaluve don't have a fifth the opportunity that anyone born in the U.S. has. But
I bet they don't complain very much.
They don't, but they don't, because they also don't know any better. Like they don't know, like they don't know where Erin and I live and how we live and what we do.
And weirdly enough, I think some of those people probably really love life.
I'm sure they do, right? Because there's a bunch of reasons why, but I think the piece that I go to is like, we were fortunate enough to be born here, right? And so like, just inherently by winning the genetic lottery to be born here in the United States, I have a tenfold advantage over at least 50% of the world.
But it kind of depends on what you're trying to do, like what your advantage is. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
Warren Buffett,
a lot of those people,
Warren Buffett born in Agbaluve is not Warren Buffett.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, even what Warren Buffett did is still an oddity.
Right. But it's so, I mean, pick like you born in Agbeluve, you are probably, you're not in this same position that
I would
you
be
are here.
so sunburned.
Oh, you'd be dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 100% you'd be dead. Right. But I mean, so born in there, you can have all the talent. And so there's Thomas Sowell in, I don't remember which one of his books, talks about this kind of example that he brings up. Like if you take the top 10% performers in the world, he might have used 1%, but we'll say 10 because I don't remember the exact number. And you look at all them and you see across all of them, they all have these 5 traits, right? And so you have to have all 5 of these traits to be that successful. The likelihood of having all 5 of those traits is pretty small when you stretch that out. And if one of those traits is being born into an area with economic opportunity, you are already, now you're the most you get is 4. So you can be 4 out of 5. So you can still be probably pretty successful, but you're not going to take it to that next level because you're missing that other 5th piece, right? And if you extrapolate that out over 10 characteristics, 20, 100, whatever, you being born in these different areas automatically, now it doesn't say that you can't be, right? There is a scenario where a Warren Buffett born in Agbeluve, Togo ends up Warren Buffett in the US worth billions of dollars, Berkshire, like that kind of scenario does happen. The likelihood of that happening out of all the different Warren Buffetts born across all the different universes and timelines is pretty small.
But then what do you attribute to the lack of successful people here?
That's
because if you really look at it, they always talk about the wealthy or the top, which I consider what they consider wealthy and whatever, but you're still grouping successful people in like the top. You have the top 1%ers, but you also have like the top like 15 to 20%, which engulfs a lot of people that people don't realize.
Yeah. That's
like me, you, and probably a lot of the people that
like
we
Aaron
know.
And I think Aaron and I fall in like the top 5%, something like that, of income earners, right? It's different when you look at like total wealth versus income, because like salary, hourly pay, stuff like that, they consider income. But if I get $13 million in stock dividend, that's not technically income.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. That's a whole thing. Like
so that's a whole different
those top 1%ers,
but that
have a total
right.
Asset value and everything.
But I think that goes to where's your viewpoint? Where's your baseline coming from? Like if our baseline is poverty in the United States, then yeah, there's a ton of people who are poor, right, and who are living in what we would call squalid conditions.
So then, do you think if someone makes it from Togo and makes it super successful, does that make them 10 times better than someone here?
Maybe.
Or is it the other side? You know, you see a lot of those tribal countries like that, like don't like to be industrialized.
Right.
You know,
like, yeah, there's a lot of
reasons. They think that we're
reasons.
losers because we don't wake up and there's like just a lion walking by on the safari. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
Like there's a lot of reasons why they are what they are, especially when you look at sub-Saharan Africa and in different pieces of Africa or India. Like there's a lot of different drivers that come to it. But I think the thing that I've been thinking about is like, as I look to divert charity resources, we'll call it, donating them here, donated them there.
I think here you have to be very selective because there's a lot of corrupt charities
So
here.
most charities are trash. Like if you look at the
per dollar, how
much goes there, absolute garbage. Direct, either give direct or give direct give, or direct give cash, or one combination of those 3 words, is a charity that gives money, like cash, to people in these areas. So we'll just keep picking on Agbeluve because it's the only other city I know over there. So if I'm with direct, give direct, I think we'll say what it is. Brett will somehow post it in the show notes. I'll find what it is and let you know what it is. But so if I go there, right, and I give everyone in that village $1,000, that village explodes with posterity because they spend the money in the most effective way. Now, you're still going to have trash bags. You're still going to have people who are just going to squander it. Same thing on this side. But they reinvest into their community and they do the things that they want to do to promote the growth of their area.
Okay, but you take that and spin that. What happened to the Indian reservations? Same idea.
The
It
Indian
turns into.
reservation-
I feel like it's going to turn into, because an Indian reservation is basically socialism.
It's the Indian reservation has, even though like we don't have governmental control, like they still have these authorities, and it wasn't controlled of like, so the way that this direct give works is they're going to give you essentially like a fancy flip phone that has your money on it. So there is no break in between you and the money. And as you go through the Indian reservations, and I know a little bit about them, but you have like your tribal council and like there's different layers that go through. And so the money, some money goes direct to the people. Most of it goes to the tribe, if I recall correctly. So when you go through that, you're not giving the money directly to the people. In addition, the way that they can develop in there, like they're stuck on that reservation to try to grow and develop in there. So you're building within this confine where if you're in a free market like Togo and you're giving to these people, that money can expand outward, and they can do
reservations
whatever
are
they want.
pretty massive, though.
They are, but it's still a confined resource. The other piece that's a flip point is that $1,000 given to that, I think they're called Togonese individual.
But do we run into the same problem with like welfare, where we give people money here and then they just a lot of
No,
them
because
don't want to do
it's not
anything.
like you're not giving them $1,000 every month. It's like, hey, this year you're going to get $1,000. Here you go. It's not like I'm turning on a welfare faucet to just continue to give you. So think about it. And if you were to take $40,000 and you're going to either give $40,000 to this charitable organization that's going to go over there and do something with it, versus taking that $40,000 and spreading it across 40,000 individuals. Your ROI on that $40,000 given to 40,000 people is going to be exponentially more impactful than that individual group going over and trying to do something with that $40,000. And I'll find so the guy was on.
I don't know how much I believe that. I just feel like when you give people money, they'll squander it more. Like if you take that organization,
but why would they squander it? So if you give,
but why do people who are on welfare now squander it? There shouldn't be. The idea of welfare should be to get off of it.
But there's ample opportunity here. There is not ample opportunity there.
Well, so what if you took that same organization that's supposed to be fairly honest here, and you go into these villages or tribal areas, whatever, and just have like what do you think would bring the most opportunity to your area? Mm-hmm. Is it a school? Is it a casino? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to build that for you to give you the opportunities, because then it's at least you take an actual vote of the people,
but they don't
let it run it like a democracy.
Yeah. So what most of the evidence points to is that charities don't want, I mean, they'll do that and they'll ask, but they want to do something that looks sexy that's going to bring in more money.
No, but I'm saying if you're under the same charity that's supposed to be fairly honest and
yeah,
you know what I mean?
But either way, like, so the honesty of the charity mostly comes to like how much of the money, if I give you $1, how much of that goes to there, right? Like I know like the Susan G. Komen, United Way, a number of them that are like really big, they have humongous overhead costs.
You know, one I've really kind of watched and I see a lot of ads for it, but the Tunnel to Towers. Have you seen that one? Mm-mm. Where they build homes, like mortgage-free homes for like veterans, like first responders that have been injured or whatever. And they have a bunch of Mark Wahlberg and all these different people, Gary Sinise, but like Dave Portnoy was on there because he donates, and they say that 95 cents of every dollar goes to.
And see that,
and Portnoy, you know, if anybody knows Dave Portnoy, like that guy does not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And he goes, they're talking to him, and he's like, you know, we appreciate you, because it was a guy's. It's called Tunnel of the Towers because the guy who started it, his brother was a 9/11 firefighter in New York, and he was going through the tunnel, and he never came out, like one of the tunnels, you know, whatever, and he died during that. And Portnoy's like, oh no, I did my research on you before and Portnoy's the guy that will, and he'll call you out on it.
Yeah.
So I assume, but yeah, so I think it's 95 cents of every dollar goes. And they're building a whole community, I believe, in like Florida.
Yeah.
Of like condos for people, but they've had like different people they'll build. Like if they're, you know, if they don't have any legs or they don't have losing, but they'll build these like crazy houses that are adaptive for them and all that stuff. And it's like a mortgage-free house for them. But so 95 cents of every dollar,
which is phenomenal.
I feel like is a lot of money.
That's really good. That's really good. And again, I'm not trying to persuade people to donate all the money outside. This is more of like my internal monologue as I've tried to balance, I don't know, my charity credits that I'm donating out. Right. The other thing is if you give $1,000 to that person in Agbaluve, that might be like giving them $100,000 here. Mm-hmm. So the bang for your buck is humongous over there, right? So it's just, again, I would say if I had to make a 100% like definitive decision now, I would say support your friends and neighbors first, right?
Because there's a lot of wealth in Africa. Like South Africa has a ton of wealth. So what are they doing to bring up their neighbors and their countrymen? You know what I mean? So you got to look at that too.
Right. So there's a bunch of different things, but it's also, they're not their countrymen. South Africa is their own country. So that's like us. Like we don't do a shit ton. We don't care about Canada or Mexico.
I mean, we spend a lot of money in Mexico.
I mean, we do, but that's because we like to buy drugs. But like, so that's the piece when you look at that, like Togo, if Africa is the gym, Togo is like this cutting board.
Yeah, I get like they're different. Yeah.
So they're
the continent, I guess the continent of Africa. I get that too. But I mean, but you get what I'm saying. But again, you're looking within the confines of your own country. So if they're following the same thing, they're going to support South Africans, or they're going to support Congolese or Zimbabwe or wherever they're looking at. Like those are their countrymen. The people next door are not their countrymen. Yeah.
So anyways, I'm not trying to persuade one way or the other, but it's a thought that I've had recurring and kind of looking through and balancing. Because again, my initial reaction when I see people like adopting kids from overseas or like donating money and going to do all these travel, it's like, what the fuck? Like we have a lot of need here. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we have a shit ton of opportunity here. And if we have a shit ton of opportunity here, why do I need to give you more to pursue one of the most opportunity rich countries in the world, if not the most opportunity rich? Like if there's so much opportunity here, why am I helping you when you should help yourself? Again, not as definitive in that position, but like that's some of the thought that goes into this.
Well, I think that's always been a problem in the U.S. is the handout situation of giving to people and they're not gonna. That's what we've talked about before. Redefining.
Yeah.
I mean, just like you see the political ads of we're gonna make childcare more affordable, so you're gonna give people money. It's a capitalistic society. You don't have to take your kid to the $2,000 a month daycare.
Right. That's defining like what do we consider poor? Like what's a tolerable living?
But I just think, my point is like, or we're going to make this more affordable. No, that means you're going to either give somebody subsidies. So, hey, you're a $2,000 a month daycare, but we're going to give you a government subsidy so you can drop it down to $250 a month.
Yeah, so this person can go here.
So where's that come from? Because people remember, the federal government doesn't have any money without the people. No. So they're just going to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. Where there's, like you said, there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing too, is when people have kids, great, whatever you want to do, but you have to remember the cost of having children.
What did I just hear?
Daycare is not cheap. If you don't breastfeed, formula is not cheap.
I think when Social Security was deployed, there was 7 workers to every 1 retiree. And now we're at like 3 to 1.
I used to have an old lady I
4 to 1,
trained.
3 to 1.
She said eventually we're going to have too many people in the wagon and not enough people pulling the wagon.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's things people need to think about. But yeah, so when you're listening to these ads, whoever you decide, just educate yourself. But when someone says we're going to do this and this, they don't have money. They're taking money from you to do this. And by taking money from you, they might take it from Social Security, which is still your money
Right.
for later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't. It's not about handouts.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the idea of a campaign fund, or a campaign promise. We're going to make things cheaper. No, they're not.
But it's like, how? How do we make things better? How do we? How do we
I just told you,
change?
they're going to subsidize
Right.
people.
But I have that question about any politician. Like we had when they had the Douglas County Sheriff election a couple years ago, all of the nominees made their pass through the station to give their pitch. And every time they all came through and they said pretty much the same thing of like, oh, we're going to make the streets safer and do this stuff. And to every single one of them, I'd ask how. And they all give pretty much the same answer. And that's probably one of a totally different tangent that would take another 2 hours of like just a general gripe of politicians and leaders who say, hey, I'm going to do this. And it's like, how? How are you?
I like when politicians tell you how they're going to make more money for the country. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if they're telling us how they're going to do anything, I don't care what they're doing. Like, tell me how you're going to do it. When you say,
no, that's what I'm saying. When they actually break it down and tell you how they're going to do it.
Down, cool. But like, let's get. I mean, we're going to talk high level, but like, let's also talk through how that all works all the way down to like to me. So when people say that the stock market's doing great and the economy's doing great, and I'm like,
it's not
cool. But like, what does that do for me? Well, in any situation, I mean, go back.
Well, I mean, that should be the idea of when the market's doing well and the economy's doing well, usually supply is higher.
Right. But isn't the market at like a close to an all-time high?
Yeah, the stock market's kind of, I think, a little bit skewed more than it used to be.
Right, but that's like the barometer.
There's too many players in the game now.
That's like a barometer. They're like, oh, hey, if the market's doing well, the economy's doing well, and I'm like,
well, I think the market responds to the economy. Like when people release like their earnings reports is when you'll see the market change. But I mean, usually if the economy is actually doing well, which that involves interest rates and things like that, which supply will be higher, which means prices are down. But people talk about different campaign spiels, whatever, but Trump will talk about how he's going to try to make more money. We're going to start fucking drilling oil. We're going to change tariffs. We're going to do these things. And
the tariffs are the one I'd like to explore, like to actually sit down and talk to someone, like how, because in my mind, so if companies have earning targets, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever been fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to look at it, to sit on an earnings call and listen to people talk about earnings per shares and the targets and these growth and.
Well, projections are the most made up thing of anything in the world.
Right. So, but that's what's driving. So when you talk about earnings, if you're a stock company, you're giving out these earnings per share. So if my shares are $50 and I'm doing an earnings per share of, $2, I'm saying that we are going to grow our stock by $2. Cool. So at $50, that's an incentive for people to buy in, right? And then as people buy in, you get worth a little more, and then you have to validate that. But if too many people start selling, then it goes down. But like, if I have those drivers, right, and now somewhere my costs go up, tariffs, cost of raw materials, supply, right, whatever, something drives that. That money comes from somewhere, right? Because I still, as the company, still want to hit my $2 earnings per share. And if one of my costs go up that I can't control, I either adjust my earnings per share and drop it down to account, or I charge more money.
I think tariffs are one of those things where it's like you want to get your product in the country. So it's like paying for advertising. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it actually affects the price of the good.
But it has to. Like, it's a cost.
Well, but I don't know that it does because like you took it, like Trump talks about putting tariffs on China.
Cool.
Well, China is bringing over shiploads of things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe on that one ship, they charge a tariff of $1,000. He's going to make it $2,000.
Right.
Well, to them, it's like advertising. They have so much product and their margins are so good on their project because they have the cheap slave labor. To them, it's like, well, paying this $2,000 out of our bottom line, we're still making so much. But if you make it so high that, or the U.S. says we're just not going to buy goods from you, it's not worth
Right.
it. It's like when Walmart goes to a company and says, "Hey, we're going to order." They go to Samsung. We're going to order 10 million TVs from you, but we want it $5 cheaper than what Target can sell.
So
them
you
for.
get a worse product most of the time.
Well, but let's talk about most of the Chinese things. They're selling like plastic fucking
They're
toys.
selling shit products.
So that's what I'm saying. So to them,
they're offsetting the cost somehow.
But I think a tariff is one of those weird things where you want your product in that country so bad that you're gonna eat the cost.
You do.
So I think on that deal, they're probably paying their slave labor less.
So maybe, but yeah, that's what
I
I'm
don't know
saying,
how much
but
it changes the price here because we've had tariff wars
somewhere
forever.
That money gets made up.
I think a tariff is a weird one, especially with other countries when you're talking about the world economy. That's one of those weird things where they're going to take this the hit because they know they can make so much money because they're not moving like it's not like a luxury tax like on a car where they're
Right.
selling one at a time. I mean, they're selling like containers of shit that are coming
Right,
over.
but
to
let's say we have, I'm making these numbers up, 20% tariffs, right? So we add 20% tariffs to it, right? And they say, all right, cool. Like we're gonna eat 19% of that.
And it might be like I said, it might be like an advertising budget. It might be a tariff budget.
Right, I'm sure they do have. That's got to be built in there. Like we have, like you have sales tax built into budgets. Like people have these costs built into their budgets. But again, if you're targeting a certain dollar threshold, and your costs go up, you have limited options, right? If you're going to still try to make that amount, you make a sacrifice somewhere, right? So something has to give, and that's the part I'd want someone much smarter than me to like talk through and like explain that on an economic level, because I get the point of like we are a gigantic consumer, like we gobble up everything, so. People want just in sheer volume. If you go from 20 to 25,
And that's why I think to
tariff,
answer,
like,
I think it's a volume.
the
thing.
sheer volume works. But if I go from 20% tariff to 10%, right? That's a 50% increase in my cost.
It is, but I think it's like, or if you look at like a grocery store, okay, you look at like a grocery store in Omaha, and let's say you're going to go buy a carton of eggs, and it's $5. Well, you go to like a small town where my parents live in like an extremely small town.
Yeah.
And there's just like one little grocery store. Well, that carton of eggs might be $10 because their buying volume is not good enough.
Yeah.
So I assume it's similar to that. You know what I mean? That's where the tariff game
It
plays.
would be. It is to a. It
and
is
it's
to a
where when
point,
you're
but
the
at-
big consumer,
But at
you
some
can,
point, like that, there's a tipping point, right? Where it's like,
I don't know, because I think when you're like the biggest consumer out there, like Walmart, you can call your shot. Like Walmart gets
well,
a
people
lot of,
just won't do it, right? They'll
then
change and they'll go through a different route. Like they'll have to do something will change.
I think that sometimes that works, but it's when you're the biggest consumer in the world, no one's going to pass up. Walmart might go to Samsung and do $500 million in business, and the next closest person is 200. Well, you're not going to lose $500 million in business. So you look at like another country. Well, the U.S. probably does, like with China, probably does 10 billion.
Right, billions. Like
And their
billions.
next closest person might be like 2.
Yeah.
So are you going to pass up 8 billion because
But that's the part that I want to understand more about.
I assume it's like an advertising budget as well.
But it could, and I would
And
imagine
sometimes
like
you gotta
if
eat
you
the
if you
cost.
raise it up some, they're going to eat the cost, right? They're going to make it up somewhere. They're either going to change their earnings per share. They're going to pay people less. They're going to somehow try to bulk, their shipping. But they're going to have to either understand that they're going to make less money, or they're going to have to increase cost somewhere. And that's the part I just want someone to, again, someone like old T Soul, like Thomas Soul, come here and talk to me about tariffs, right?
Yeah.
But that's the part that I would specific to tariffs, like curious about the dynamic, because the world platform changes things, so it's no longer like I'm raising sheep and selling you wool. Like we don't have this binary.
On the world thing, you have like if you're China, you probably have like 6 customers.
Yeah, I mean you've got ton, right, and so you're selling to everywhere, right?
You know what I mean? There's only, how many ever got, I mean, if you look at like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of countries, but like, if you just look at it, like, you probably have like 6 major customers. Whereas like Walmart has a gazillion customers.
Yeah, but it's also, I don't know how many of the, like how much of, and also how much of we buy is a U.S. owned company that is manufacturing in China versus a Chinese company manufacturing in China, both selling to the U.S. I'd imagine we tariff differently.
Yeah. And I assume that has something to do with before it leaves the port or gets into the port, and however they do that.
Right,
Or
like there's so many different layers. Like again,
I'm not smart enough to know all that.
It's same.
This just goes back to
Same.
I just like to hear any campaign that they're going to talk about how the country's going to make more money, not how they're going to give you more money. Because when they're giving more money, they're getting that money from
Right,
somewhere.
the money
for
comes
sure,
from somewhere, right?
Which is normally taxes.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
our whole thing of this talk was, I think there's opportunity for people, especially here, that people should take advantage of. You know, like they talk about the border crossings all the time. And I always joke around and I said, there's a ton of hardworking Hispanics that I would trade a bunch of low life, fucking useless U.S. citizens for any day of the week, because there are a lot of hardworking people that would come over here and do 10 times as much just because you're born into this, what I consider like the greatest country in the world, the freedoms we have and the abilities to, which I mean, the freedom part, we're basically taxed like 45 to 50% of your income with all your taxes. So it's the freedom part's like a weird part on that. But anyway, I think that
Were you channeling Tanner there?
just for a second, but I think that people overlook the opportunities that are here and always just want to play like a sympathy game and there are some people who generally need help. We get that too. We're not throwing all these people under the bus, but like Matt just tried to give a guy an opportunity who was obviously willing and able to make money.
Yeah.
So, you know, take advantage of opportunities that you have to grow and be a better human. And you know what? If you need that community, like I said, get into your local churches.
Like Brett said,
Or a gym or something that builds a community.
I'm not religious, but I think there's a lot of community to be built. And I think when you have a community, and I was thinking about this as well. I've had a lot of really ponderous thoughts lately, but thinking of,
well, Aaron's been gone, so you've had a lot of time to yourself.
The thing that I said the thing that I've noticed the most, but just besides Aaron not being there, but like one of the things I've really noticed is like, I don't turn on lights in the house.
Amber and I live in the dark for the most part.
I don't turn on lights and I don't open blinds, because the other day it was like Tuesday afternoon at 2 and I'm like, why the fuck is it so dark in here? Oh, that's because I haven't turned on a light.
And Amber's more
Saturday.
Amber's more like vampire style. I'm like, I'll turn on lights. Like, I'll go to take a shower. Like, I'll turn on like the bedroom light. I'll turn on like the bathroom light. I'll turn on the shower light. She'll come in and like shut like 2 of the 3 off and be like, why do you have so many lights on? That's like, first of all, these are like high efficiency light bulbs, like, you know, but if we're just sitting at home, it's just the TV's on. Like no one ever probably thinks we're at our house.
Yeah. So the ponderous thought was like, is you trying to define a community and what brings the community together, and thinking about like, I mean, I think barbell is different. So I equate it to things that I know, right? And one of them is a gym. So barbell is a little bit different because it's pretty small. So you see the same people and stuff. So just inherently, like, we're here and we see how much you invest into the gym. So we give that much more cares about the gym. But if you were to look at like a Genesis or Voss Fitness or Lifetime, you're going to see those same people, but it's such a bigger population that like that circle of people you actually give a shit about at that gym is a lot smaller. And like, that's your community because you found things to bond over, right? Whether it's making fun of the dude wearing gloves or whatever it is, like you found something to bond about, and that pulls you closer. So now you have more to care about, and you value that neighbor or that person, whoever is part of that community, more. And finding things like that is super fucking important. Like it adds a different level of value to your life. You care about things more. Like we walked around our neighborhood with both Jake and Yurik, our shepherds, and they had little saddlebag backpacks, and we'd walk around and we'd pick up trash and put it in their saddlebag, and then we'd throw it away. And we could walk every single day and fill that fucking thing up every single day with trash. If I walk up and down Ponca, which is roughly, we'll call it 1.5 mile, 2 mile stretch, get maybe half a bag full of trash. And we're not the only ones who stop and pick stuff up. Like I've seen people stop their vehicle, hop out, and they saw like a cattle feed bag on the side of the road that blew out of some guy's truck. Pick it up, throw it in the back of their truck, and drive off, right? But it's because they're in that area and they know Ron, who lives right there. And they're like, oh, I like Ron. Ron and I have coffee every now and then and talk about whatever, but you have something to bond. So like you care about them more than that person you just walk by and you're like, oh, that's a human being.
There's a very community in a small town, because small towns are kind of, like I say, are kind of like the gym, because they will self-govern themselves. Like in a small town, you're not going to get away with a lot of things.
No.
Because everybody knows. You might smash a couple mailboxes, but it's not going to take long before they figure out who smashed a mailbox.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like the gym. The gym will self-govern. Like if someone's being a piece of shit, it's not going to take long before. Because you might not talk
Except
to
for
people all the time.
Tanner's still here.
You might not talk to people all the time, but you all have the same idea of how you want things to go. So, but yeah, so overall, I mean, be careful on a hot and fast brisket. On your drums. Make sure you get your temperatures dialed in first.
Make sure your wife's cool with hiring homeless people.
But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity out there for people. You just need to put some work in sometimes. But yeah, find a community, like, you know, the gym here, church, some kind of group, whatever, like a
I still
book
want to
club.
like I would support, if you're looking for a community, start with a church. Even if like church isn't your jam and you're like, nope, not for me.
Maybe like a book club.
Yeah, the book club, like find something to care about that's a little bit bigger than yourself and involves other people that you can connect on.
Yeah. Yeah. Go out there and do good things and just be a decent human.
Most of the time.
And try to be a little less shitty every day.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. But like, subscribe, share, follow. We're on the YouTubes and the audio platforms. And we'll see you guys next time.